Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'm going to be sharing ghost stories from Colorado. Let's get into it. Story 1. It was not more than a year ago when I experienced the most dreadful feeling when I was touched by a ghost. At least I feel like it was a ghost. It was late February and the snow was just melting away. My little sister was spending the night with her friend, and my little brother was doing the same at my cousin's house. I was living the life of an only child, which I never want to do ever again. I had just finished watching a rerun of Family Matters in our downstairs family room, and I was getting a little bit tired. So I turned off the TV and walked up to my room in the dark. When I turned on the light, it was as if I was replenished again, so I started watching my own TV. As I did so, I'd closed my door and locked it. That way I could change into my pajamas. I laid in my bed, watched a couple of movies, and finally I felt tired like before. I checked my room again. I made sure the window and the door was locked and that my closet was closed so that the cat wouldn't get into it. I turned the TV off. I couldn't fall asleep for some reason, so I started to count sheep. All of a sudden, I hear someone walking up on the stairs. At first I thought it was my mom or dad, who happened to be in their room across the hall fast asleep. I looked at the crack of my door. There was no light on. I heard the steps go on the stairs, then down the stairs, then up again. It continued. It went down the stairs and started slowly coming back up. I coughed and I heard it run up the stairs extra fast. I then heard my doorknob moving as if someone was trying to get in. Now let me tell you, if it was my mom or dad, they would have already been yelling at me for locking the door. But I didn't hear any yelling, just constant breathing and huffing to get through the door. It suddenly stopped. A few seconds later I heard the door unlock. I then thought to myself, there is no key to my room. As a matter of fact, there isn't even a keyhole on the other side of the knob. Swoosh, the door then flies open and hits the back wall. I then retreat under my blankets and then pinched myself because for a moment I thought it was just a terrible dream. I wasn't dreaming. I then heard the person walk slowly into my room and stand right beside my bed. Then it touched me. Both hands were on my back, freezing cold hands. As soon as I felt that, I screamed out, "Mom! Dad! Papa, Papa, Papa! Please help me! Papa, Papa!" After that, I heard everything go backwards. It walked out, closed the door, locked it, rattled the knob, walked up and down the stairs, and then was gone. Seriously, no one believes me. My mom and dad said that they didn't hear a thing, and no one else was there with me. But I know what I heard and what I experienced. To me, it was all true. Story 2. Me and my dad swear this house is haunted. Of course my mom won't have any of it, but my dad was asleep and he heard high heels walking across the room. I know it's true because I've heard them too. My dad thought it was my mom trying to scare him. He waited until it got really close to him. He felt cold. He turned around and was going to scare my mom. He yelled, "Rah!" and there was nobody there. And a few nights later, we heard it again. He waited until it got really close and he held real still. He felt cold again. Then the covers were pulled up around his neck. He waited until the footsteps were a little farther away. He turned around and there was nobody there. We see the curtains in the hall move all the time. The stuff fall during the middle of the night. Whatever it is, I don't think it's trying to hurt us. It must have been a mom because it covers us up at night if we're uncovered. If anybody has experienced stuff like this, please let me know. Story 3. I had just moved into my new house. It has a swimming pool and my brother and I were swimming. I looked away and saw a little boy run by. I only have nieces. I didn't tell anyone. Then about 2 weeks later, two of my friends came over. One of them is very sensitive to spirits and such. Both of them said they saw a little boy run by. Then we went into the little shack in my backyard and were looking around. There was a microwave in there with no power going to it. It started making noises and then we heard a scream that sounded like a little boy. I tried talking to him and he won't respond. He seems sad whenever he's near me. I just want to help. There was this other time when I was at my sister's house and I woke up early to do my homework. When I was done, I had time to sleep. When it was time to wake up, I couldn't. There was a dark thing over me. I felt like it could go in me. I thought it was taking over me for a minute. Time stood still and I went somewhere else, but I don't know where. And after that, almost every morning I could feel it. I never saw it after that. Story 4. Now, some people called me a liar. Others tell me that I was too young to know what I saw. I wasn't. To me, a 9-year-old kid doesn't make up something this big. It all started one day in our hotel. I live in Illinois, but I was staying at a hotel with my parents in Colorado. The hotel was very new, not even a year old. After dinner, my parents and grandparents went with me downstairs to the pool. My grandparents and my dad watched me swim while my mom went outside to soak in the hot tub. This pool was your average indoor pool, except the walls were different. They were almost like clear plastic, except they were windows, so you were able to see outside. It was really late out, so it was pitch black when you tried to look out. You could only see a dim reflection of the pool and the chairs. A little while later, my dad left with my grandparents to go back to their house. My grandparents went upstairs while my dad went outside to get my mom. I got out of the pool while they were gone and looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw myself, but then I saw something else. I squinted and looked closer. I saw a man. Now this is where I started to reconsider my sanity. I blinked and looked around. I was completely alone. I looked at a different window to make sure that I wasn't seeing someone else that was outside. I couldn't see anything. I looked back at the window. I saw myself. Then I looked deeper. I saw the man. He was smaller than a regular sized person, like he was far away. The man seemed almost like he was transparent. It was in the air. Then I started to feel really cold. His shoes were black and he was wearing black trousers. He had a white shirt like one of those man blouses from way back when. He also wore a black tailcoat and was wearing a top hat. He looked like he was around 40 or so. He was walking slowly and his head was down. I continued staring, then he looked at me. Just then my mom opened the back door. I jumped. "Michelle, are you okay?" she asked. I didn't tell her what I saw. No one in my family believes in ghosts and neither do I. It really freaked me out though. I asked her if anyone was outside. She said she was the only one out there. I tried to push it out of my mind, but I couldn't. A little while later I looked again. He was still there. I jumped into the pool and tried not to think about it. Eventually my mom and I left. As we did, the fire alarm went off. We went upstairs to find out that it was a false alarm, but no one had pulled the alarm. They didn't know how it happened. It really freaked me out. For the rest of the night I had a weird feeling. It was like someone was watching me, but not in a bad way. I don't believe in the paranormal, but I have a feeling if it was a ghost, maybe the hotel was new because it was rebuilt. Maybe a long time ago there was a hotel in that spot. It burned down and many people died. That ghost that I saw could have been a man who died in the fire, came back to keep the same tragedy from happening again. What do you think? Story 5. My school has a very interesting past. A few years before my school was on the lot where it is now. The lot belonged to a psychiatric hospital. And before that, it was a tuberculosis hospital. The school itself is separated into 6 different buildings. The library, which was once the church, the administration building, which was where the morgue was, the high school building was where they kept the lockdown patients in the psychiatric hospital, the middle school was the cafeteria, the art building was the place where staff went on break, and the drama department was the sunroom in the tuberculosis hospital. There are lots of freaky stories about the school grounds, and there isn't a person in or around the school who hasn't seen, felt, or heard strange things. On the first day of school in August, one of my teachers said that when they bought this lot for the school, they had to knock down the 7th building. That's now the baseball field, because doors kept locking, the power wouldn't work, and people were constantly feeling sick. He also told us that the administration building, all the phones would ring simultaneously for a few seconds and then stop. I never really took any mind to this and always thought that the teachers were just messing with my mind. And up until a few months ago, Nothing strange had happened, but one day when I was helping our school librarian, something did happen. I was sitting at the checkout counter in the library when a middle school girl came in. She walked around for a while when suddenly I heard a book drop right next to the girl. I watched her for a few minutes as she kept throwing books on the ground. "Aren't you going to pick those up?" I asked. She looked over at me and shook her head no. "Well, why not?" I asked. "I'm not doing it," the girl replied. "It's the little girl in the funny clothes." I began freaking out slightly, but the girl didn't seem to mind. She checked out a book and left. When the librarian came back in, I told her what happened. She smiled. "Oh, she's harmless. I call her Jenny. She just likes to have fun. Apparently she died in this church years ago." I looked at her like she was crazy, but I couldn't deny what I or the little girl had seen. As I was leaving, the librarian chuckled. "You should be here at night. They're all over the place." After that, I ran out the door. Story 6. It happened one night when I was in Montana visiting my aunt and my cousin. My mom had called me to tell me that our cat General had just died. I was devastated. A week later, when I arrived back home in Colorado, I was sitting in my living room watching TV when I heard this familiar scratching noise. General used to make this noise all the time, so I was curious and I stood up and looked in the kitchen. There he was. It was like he was not even dead. He looked alive and actually there, like you can go pet him. So as curious as I was, I got up and went over into my kitchen. Then he was gone. I never told anyone about it that night. That was until my mom kept complaining about some weird scratching noise at her door at 3 o'clock every morning. At first, she thought it was either me or my twin brother. That was until one weekend we were up staying at our dad's house, like we did every other weekend, when she heard it again. At that moment, she knew that something was in our house. At first, she thought we might have mice, and then she thought twice about that, considering it was winter and they weren't out at that time. The night I came back from my dad's house, my mom and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie when she suddenly jumped up and looked into the kitchen. I didn't think much of it until she started yelling, "Bree, it's General. He's in the kitchen." That's when I knew she had seen him too, and that it wasn't just me. After 3 years of seeing him on and off, he just suddenly stopped showing up, like he had moved on or something. We just recently moved to California about 8 months ago, and just bought a new house about a week ago. There's no sign of him yet, but my mom and I both have some crazy idea going through our heads that he will show up here. We know he will. Story 7. This experience is not for the ones who are scared of ghosts. I was a teen, and my mom and I got into an argument. I told her not to close my door and turn out the light. She does it anyways. I'm sitting under my blanket, and all of a sudden, it flies off of me. I pull it back on, and something hits my face. My little brother, 12 at the time, came in and asked me if I was okay. I was screaming. He took a look at my face. The right side had a maroon handprint, twice the size of mine. He got my mom. She said to cut out the crap. The next day in my algebra class, I was set up against the wall on my desk. I felt something breathing on my neck. I looked above me, and the air vent was on the other side of the room. That night, I fell asleep. At 1 a.m., I woke up feeling very cold. I opened my eyes and could see my breath. Next thing I knew, my favorite stuffed animal was grabbed out of my arms. I started crying. Next thing I knew, my arms were being scratched by a fork. How the fork got up there, I don't know. I wore a jacket to color guard the next day, and the scratches that bled profusely the night before went away. No trace of scabs. The next night, I was sleeping, and at the same time the night before, I felt cold. Again, I could see my breath. I looked next to me and saw a long imprint in my bed. I put the blanket over my head, and it flew off. Then my figure started to flip my hair. I checked out a lot of books, and they were all coincidental to me. For example, poltergeists usually revolve around one person. Second, they usually occur between the ages of 10 and 20. Lastly, the person it occurs to is usually either sad or angry. I was both. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.